Hi everyone, Fina here from Fina Reads. Today with another book review. I just recently read, finally, book 1 of the Shadows of the App, which is Empire in Black and Gold, a 10-book series by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which is not just any 10-book series, but his debut 10-book series, which is quite impressive if you think about that. Shadows of the Apt is a 10-book series that you can read in one go, but there are also different arcs in there, so you can actually break it up really nicely. And Ellen at the Library of Alexandria is currently doing a read-along. Well, I mean, it started in August. We are in October now, but it is what it is. And he wanted to read the first 4 books, one each month. Book 1, Empire in Black and Gold, starts off with quite some action. You're thrown in the middle of an attack of a city. You're kind of trying to figure out what's happening while everybody is squirming around and while all the action is happening. And you're meeting our main character, Stenwald, who was helping to prevent the city from being attacked, but something went wrong, so he and his team have to start retreating and actually fleeing from that scene. And then you have a time jump 20 years later. Stenwald is still your main character, but now he's in a university city. You get to know some of his students, and you learn what he did the last 20 years, which is basically trying to convince everyone that that attack of the city 20 years ago was just the beginning and that a war is imminent. So I haven't read any of the other books quite yet, so I don't know, how long this war is going to be, if it's going to be all the 10 books, we will see, or just the first 4 and then something else is happening along the series. Who knows? That's why this is so interesting, because we're all in here for the ride, and this is a fantasy series that not many people know anything about, so it's, experiencing it for the first time for a lot of us without being spoiled, without really knowing what was going on, which is why I'm so excited actually about this read along, if that makes any sense. The Shadows of the Apt series is unlike other fantasy that I've read. First of all, you're not just dealing with humans or elves or, one of the typical kind of fantasy races. You have humans that have insect traits. They're called kindin. And depending on the insect or the race they're belonging to, you have wasp kindin, beetle kindin, moth kindin, all that stuff. And those races are separated into those that can handle the art, which are essentially magical abilities, and those who are apt, which means they are able to handle mechanical devices. And what I found really interesting is that those 2 traits, if you will, are not really intermingling. So if someone has magical abilities, they are not really great with mechanical devices. They don't even know how to turn a lever or stuff like that, and the other way around. In the first book of the series, you already get to see a lot of the world. You already learn a lot of the history of the different kindin, where they're coming from. Some are really ancient races, and you hear beginnings of the depth that the series, at least I hope, really goes into, with some of them have been being around for years and years and years, and that have a lot of cultural history that they're bringing into today's time. And with that history comes also a lot of biases, prejudices against other races. And what I really liked about book 1 already is that interrelationship between people of different kindin or people of different races. So just as an example, you have the wasp kindin, who is a rather aggressive kind, and they are currently trying to take over the world. They are the ones that attacked the city back then. By the way, I'm not spoiling much. You learn all of that pretty much at the beginning. They attacked the city in the prologue, and they have been growing their empire since then. That's what Stenwald has been warning about. The second part that I found really interesting is the politics in those different cities. So there's one city that is not really ruled by a government or anything. It's kind of ruled by itself, by the different gangs that are in the city. Yes, there are magistrates that help rule the city, but they are also influenced by the different gangs that are in there. And I found that concept really fascinating, because that opens up the story for a lot of intrigue and a lot of really subtle kind of scheme up on scheme up on scheme type of situations, which I can't wait to see what is going to happen in that particular city. And that's kind of how the story in general is. There's so many layers to it. There's so much potential in here that book one really just scratches on the surface of. Again, with the knowledge that I have of just reading book one. I haven't touched book two yet. But I hope it's really the scratching on the surface of all of those different Kinden and their history, how they interact with each other, and how our main characters, not just Stenwald, but the students that he is basically throwing into the action, kind of by accident, how all of that plays out. The third thing that I really loved about this book is the writing style. I already loved Adrian Tchaikovsky's writing style when I read Children of Time, which is the first book in a sci-fi duology. And while you can see that this is his debut novel, comparing it to his later works, it's still incredible. There's so much gorgeous prose here, and it's not flowery by any means. It's just the way he describes characters and describes landscapes and describes, everything that is happening. Just simple dialogues between two people sitting somewhere. He's really, really good at that. And yes, while you can see that this is not as strong as Children of Time, this is still incredible. So you're still at a really high mark from a writing style perspective with this book, which means he just grew even further and he just got even better in the books that he wrote at a later time. The one thing that was not as strong in this book was character depth and character development. Okay, this is book one of a 10-book series, so I'm not expecting that everything is resolved in book one. And I'm pretty sure there will be more character development going forward. We still have 9 books that need to be read. So there has to be room for some growth, right? But I found for book one, where you learned already so much about the world, about, in particularly, the different Kinden, about their history, about just where they're coming from, just, you learned a lot about the world itself with the different cities and where some of those are. I mean, the picture that you get in book one is already quite vast. So I was a little bit surprised that the character development really lacked in comparison to the world building and the whole setup of the initial series. And I hope that that will change in the following books. But then also, having said that, the happenings of the book, except for the first 20-year jump after the prologue, the happenings of the book are pretty close together. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's 2 months, so there is not a lot of time where characters can really develop, I think. But in some cases, it annoyed me a little, because the character felt as naive as they were at the beginning, but so much happened since the beginning, and I was hoping to see a bit more of this naivete, being lost for some of the characters. Anyway, this is really nitpicking for an otherwise really, really, really great book. And after I finished this, I was so excited. I was like all hyped up and was like, oh my god, there's so much going on. There's so much potential. I'm really curious to see where he's going with this series. It's just, the depth of it is just so incredible that I cannot wait to get to book 2, which is definitely moved up quite a bit on my TBR. So before I finish my gush fest, I wanted to read one sentence just really from the very beginning, or one paragraph from the really beginning. I already apologize for mispronouncing some of the words because I know I will do that. But this is a paragraph. Again, it's 40 pages in. So if you want to jump over it, just see when I'm looking up again and stop reading. But it's 40 pages in, so it's really at the beginning. But that's when I pretty much was sold. That paragraph I thought was just so beautifully written that I just couldn't stop reading this book. Masters, said Stenwald, and they hushed, for something in his voice must have touched them, some hitherto unmined vein of sincerity in his tone. Again, apologies for the mispronunciation. Masters, he said, listen to me now. I have come before you, and I have spoken to you before, and always you have let my words fall at your feet. Hear me now. The Wasp Empire's long war with the Commonweal is done. They have swum in the blood of the Commonweal until even the vast Commonweal could bear it no longer. They have forced the signing of a surrender that places 3 principalities into imperial hands, an area of the Commonweal that would span a whole quarter of the lowlands, where it placed here. Has the Empire put down the sword and taken up the plough? Has the Empire turned to books and learning or the betterment of its poor and its slaves? He stared at them, waited and waited, until someone said, "I'm sure you're going to tell us, Master Maker." "No," he shouted at them. "No, you tell me. You with your mercantile interests in Helleron. You tell me how many swords you have forged for the Empire. Tell me of the crossbow bolts, the fire powder, the automotive components, the engine parts, the flyer design, the tanks of fuel, and the casks of airships gas that you have sold to them at your costly prices. Tell me of the men you have met with and talked money and never asked why they might need such vast stocks of arms. For I tell you, the Empire is not an end city-state where the citizens can all take up arms and fight if they must, be they soldier or farmer or artisan. The Empire is a great nation where every man is a warrior and nothing else. The work, the labor, the harvest, and the craft they leave for their slaves. There is not a man of the Empire who is not also a man of their army. And what can they do with such an immense force safe to use it? Open your eyes, you merchants and you academics, and tell me where next such a force might march, if not here." So yeah, I love it. There's just nothing else I can say. I hope, if you haven't already, that you're interested in picking up this series, because frankly, I don't know why no one is talking about it. The beginning is just great, and I, again, cannot wait to go further down the rabbit hole of that series and learn more about the characters, the world. I'm just so interested in how some of those, especially ancient races, how we, like, what is all about them. You know, I want to learn everything about them. I want to learn where they were coming from, their history, all the details, why they are the way they are, about their magical abilities, all that kind of stuff. I'm so ready for it. Thanks so much for joining my gush review of book 1 of The Shadows of the Abt. I hope I got you excited. And if you've read it already, I would love to know what your favorite scene was. Spoiler talk. Make sure you mark it spoiler talk if there's any in the comments, because you know how it is. But if you've read it already, I really would like to know. And then if you like this review, don't forget to like and subscribe. You know, that whole spiel. Then I can see you with my next video. Till then, have a great day. Bye.